In this lesson, we will add controls for the nostrils. Now for our rig, we'll make sure that as the nostril rotates, it will influence the cheekbone. So by the end, this should look really fleshy. Now this is just one route we can take. If you wanted to, you could also go in and create a separate control for each, that we can drive them independently. But again, this is just one route. Alright, so let's say we go ahead and get started. We'll hide the face. We need a helper, so we can use it to zero out our nostrils transforms. So we'll go ahead and grab the heads helper. Let's go ahead and clone it. We'll have this renamed to PTDRB Nostril 01. Alright, so we'll go ahead and click OK. And now, let's say we go ahead and have this aligned over to the left nostril bone. Alright, great. So from here, let's drop its size. We'll have this linked to our head bone. Great. And now, we can go ahead and clone this and bring it over to the right side. So it's R nostril 01. We use Alt and align it over. Alright, so if we were to take a look at the orientation, on the right side it does match the bone object. If we were to look at our move gizmo in local mode, you can see that that is correct. And the same thing goes for the left side, so we can go in, grab both helpers, and freeze their transforms. Okay, great. Now, let's go ahead and clone these helpers, because what we need is a way to drive the nostril bone. If we decide to drive the nostrils with these helpers, we're going to get no offset values at all. Because eventually we'll want to make sure that these nostril bones are linked to these helpers here. Alright, so we want to make sure we also get those offset values so that those values can affect the cheekbones. Alright, so let's go ahead and set this up. Grabbing our helper, we'll go ahead and clone it. And we'll have this renamed to PT Ori for orientation, L nostril 01. So this one is going to control the bone object via an orientation constraint. Let's go ahead and bring down its size a bit. So I have mine at about 0.007. I think that's going to work out well. Alright, great. So from here, we can have this linked over to our helper. Alright, great. Let's go ahead and take care of the right side. Again, I'll go ahead and clone. It's going to be Ori, R nostril 01. Alright, let's go ahead and bring down the size. Again, that was 0.007. Okay, so from here, we can have this linked to the larger helper. Wonderful. Now, with the smaller helper selected, let's go ahead and Alt-right-click and use Freeze Transform to clean up the transforms. Beautiful. Now, we can go ahead and take our nostril bone objects and link them over to the larger helper. Alright, so there's one. Once we do that, we'll go ahead and freeze transforms. Let's take care of the right side next. We'll link over to the larger helper. We'll go ahead and freeze the bone's transforms. Alright, sweet. So now what we can do is go ahead and apply an orientation constraint, selecting our nostril bone. Let's go ahead and Alt-right-click, grab the constraint, and tie it to the helper. We'll test this out. Everything's moving just fine. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for the right side. Again, we're orientation constraining that to the smaller helper. Alright, wonderful. So just a few more steps. So now it's time to create an expose node. Let's go ahead and head over to Create, and we'll go ahead and find Expose TM. Go ahead and add that to the scene. And now, let's say we go ahead and quick align this over to the left nostril. Alright, wonderful. If you'd like, you can adjust the size. I think that that's just fine, but remember, you could always go to the Modify panel, scroll down a bit more until you find your display settings. I will leave this at cross so it doesn't conflict with the display of the other helpers. Let's go ahead and have this rename. That's going to be Expose L nostril 01, and now we can have this linked over to our head bone. Great. Now instead of cloning this object, we'll create a brand new one for the right side, because sometimes we have this issue where our object that gets exposed is actually matched with the object that we've cloned. So if we were to go ahead and take this expose node and clone it, and then we try to expose another object, we'll notice that that object will overwrite the object that has been exposed on the original expose node. So just to be on the safe side, we'll just go in and create a brand new expose node. Now let's go ahead and have this aligned with Shift A over to our right nodes. We'll have this renamed. It's going to be expose R nostril 01. Alright, sweet. So grabbing both expose nodes, we'll have them stored in the hidden layer. Great. Alright, I'll also make sure that this brand new exposed node gets linked to the head bone. Alright, so they both should now point back to our head. Fantastic. Alright, so it's now time to expose our nostril bone object. Let's go and grab the exposed node on the left side. We'll take care of that. Let's take a look at our rotate values. They are zeroed out. Let's go ahead and do the right side now. Again, we'll grab the exposed node, and we'll go ahead and now click on the nostril bone object and take a look at our values, and they are zeroed out as well. Now to figure out the axis that we need to tie to our cheekbone, what we'll do is go ahead and first pin down our modify panel. Let's go ahead and pin that down with the exposed node selected. And now we can go ahead and grab the smaller helper and start to rotate and take a look. It's the Z-axis. Alright, sweet. We should also set up a way to make sure that the cheek doesn't move when we rotate down, only when we rotate up. So I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. We'll basically need to work with a condition statement that says if our bone object gets to a positive value, let's make sure that the cheek doesn't move, but when it goes higher, when it starts to move up, then we want the cheekbone to move. And that way you get introduced to working with condition statements. Alright, so let's say we start on the left side. Now, if we were to go ahead and take a look at our exposed node on the left side, I'll go ahead and unpin and then pin, and then grab the smaller helper and start to rotate. You'll notice that it's a negative value we want to try to avoid. We want to make sure that when we rotate in the negative, it will not affect the cheekbone, but when we start to rotate in the positive direction, the cheek will move. Alright, so let me go ahead and show you how to set that up. And remember, on the right side, it's going to be just the opposite. Alright, so undoing back, we'll now go ahead and grab the cheekbone and head over to our motion panel. From there, let's go ahead and find our Z-axis. So with the Z controller selected, we'll now go ahead and assign a float expression controller. Alright, sweet. So from here, let's go in and we will create a variable named Nostril. Great. Let's go ahead and choose Create. We now need to search for our exposed node, so we'll go ahead and choose Assign to Controller. Let's expand the global node. From there, we will expand our neck bone. And then the head bone on the outside, we're looking for our exposed node. And there it is. Here's the one for the left nostril. So we'll expand that to get to Object and Euler Z. So remember, we don't want to move in the negative direction. So here's what we can do. We can go to our function list and look for the condition statement. Getting closer, there it is. So here's how it reads. We first add if, and then we put our statement inside of parentheses, and then we have the condition. If this is the case, well then this should happen. If not, well then this should happen. So let's go ahead and start to type this out. We'll go to our expression and we'll type if, and then from there we'll put our open and close parentheses. So next we need to put our condition. So let's go ahead and grab nostril, go ahead and copy that, paste, and we'll have this equal to, or excuse me, we'll have this set to less than 0. So if it's less than 0, if we're going in the negative direction, well then we don't want any movement from our cheekbone. Alright, so we'll go ahead and put a comma, space, and then we'll put a value 0. But if that is not the case, if the nostril is moving up, well then we want it to look at the nostril's value. So all we need to now do is go ahead and paste the name of our variable again. It's as simple as that. Really like creating expressions in 3ds Max. They make it very straightforward. So now we can now click on evaluate and test this out. So watch, when we grab the smaller helper, as we start to rotate down, no movement. But when we start to move up, there we go. Let's take a look at our character's face. Let's go ahead and see how this all looks. Fantastic. All right. And again, this is just an idea. You can take this a step further if you'd like. But let's say we go ahead and take care of the right side. So again, grabbing that bone object, we'll head over to our motion panel, find the rotate Z controller, load expression, create our variable, name nostril, choose create, and assign our local Euler Z, but this time for the right exposed node. There we go. So remember, this time we want to cancel out the positive direction because this bone object is flipped. So our expression will read as follows. If, we'll put our open and close parentheses, and inside, let's go ahead and paste the name of our variable. Paste. And this time we're using a greater than operator. So if it's greater than 0, that's going to be comma, space, 0, comma, space, and then we'll paste nostril in. Let's go ahead and evaluate this, and we'll test this out. So now, if we were to go ahead and grab the smaller helper, start rotating that, when we rotate up, everything looks good. When we rotate down, again, there's no movement. Awesome. All right, so now it's just a matter of creating a control object, and this won't take much time at all. We can go ahead and work with one of the objects that we've already made. Let's say the one for the brow. So I'll go ahead and hide the face, clone this object. That's going to be NML nostril 01. All right, so from here, let's say we go in and have this pivot centered. So we'll head over to our hierarchy panel, choose pivot, and let's go ahead and find effect pivot only. So from there, we'll go ahead and choose center to object. Wonderful. Now what we can do is quick align this over to our nostril bone. Oh, let's go ahead and make sure that it will move down. If it does not, well, we might have an idea as to why that's happening. If we were to go to link info, you could see that movement has been locked. So I'll go ahead and unlock movement and scaling if we decide to resize this object. Now, when we use Shift A to quick align, you can see it will go ahead and move down. All right, wonderful. Now we want the pivot exactly where it's at. Let's go to our modify panel, go to our vertex of object level, and we'll go ahead and take our points here and kind of move them out. So I'll go ahead and show the mesh so we can make sure that this is going to be selectable. Go ahead and just kind of move that over to the side, move it up, and then we'll go ahead and scale this down. All right, fantastic. So now that we have our control object in place, we can go ahead and have this kind of mirrored over to the right side. We'll grab our mirroring tool. Since we shifted its shape to favor the left side, we just need to make sure that we mirror this object for the right side. So we'll mirror this as a copy, which is okay. I'll go ahead and hide the face again. And again, we'll go ahead and quick align this over to the right nostril. All right, so now our controls are mirrored. All right, perfect. So the next step is to go ahead and have these linked over to our head control. If you were to go ahead and press page up, by the way, you'll see that that is the case because we have cloned from our brow control, which is also parented. All right, so we're good to go. So now, with both objects selected, let's go ahead and freeze their transforms. All right, sweet. So we're just about finished here. Now, what we basically want to do is just go in and take our smaller helpers and we'll have them linked over to our control. So there's one. Great. And then there's the next. Awesome. Let's go ahead and test this out. So when we grab the control as we start to rotate, we're driving our nose. That looks good. Let's go ahead and take care of the left side. We'll test that out. Awesome. Everything's looking great. Let's go ahead and now work on renaming the control on the right side, and we'll also want to recolor it. And we're just about finished. So we'll go ahead and use that shade of green we've been using. Looks nice. All right. It's already stored in the controls layer, so we're good to go there. But we do need to lock this down. Let's go to our hierarchy panel. We'll lock movement and scale. Let's do the same thing for the next control, movement and scale. Now I'd like to go ahead and point something out. With our control selected, if we were to go ahead and freeze our transforms, you can see that 3ds Max will still remember our locked values. And as we start to rotate, when we go ahead and use transform to 0, everything will get moved back to the skin pose. So we're good to go. This will not refresh. Now, if we were to go in and let's say change our axis order, then that would get reset and we'd have to just go in and make sure we choose the axis order that we decided for this control. If you'd like to learn more about this, by the way, feel free to take a look at Introduction to Rigging in 3ds Max. You basically find the axis order underneath your rotation list. You go ahead and scroll down a bit. And there it is. So this helps you to kind of prevent gimbal lock. But for our nose, we'll be just fine. Nothing to be concerned with. Okay, fantastic. So everything's moving great. And I'd say we can go ahead and close out this lesson. So we've learned how to create a really cool nostril rig, and we're getting some cheek influence as well. I might go ahead and bring back the face so we can see that, and also hide the hidden layer. Good stuff. All right, so guess what? We basically just have one more section to worry about, and that's the lips. So let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson and get that process started.